Joining me now is Gene Sperling, Senior Advisor to President Biden. Gene, good to have you back. Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday. So, this comment got a lot of attention from the president when he was in Madrid about it, going on for as long as it takes. And then your colleague, Brian Deese, weighed in on this as well. Let's listen to both of those pieces of sound, and then I want to get your thoughts on it on the other side, if I may.
How long is it fair to expect American drivers and drivers around the world to pay that premium for this war?
As long as it takes. So Russia cannot, in fact, defeat Ukraine and move beyond Ukraine.
Well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
So is that saying that we're expected as Americans to just sacrifice sort of our own money and income for as long as it takes to preserve the liberal world order? Does the White House believe that that's a sacrifice that we should all be willing to make?
Well, I did not really think it was a partisan issue that we should stand up to the unthinkable aggression of Putin. I'm not aware that there is a major part of the Republican Party or Democratic Party that believes that somebody could do something as unthinkable as do a military invasion, to be committing war crimes, and that we would stand back and do nothing about it. So yes, most of the democratic nations of the world, the G7, NATO, have stood up strong to Putin and made clear that we don't tolerate that.
I think you're absolutely right about that, Gene. But no, the question isn't, is it a worthy cause? That's one question. Okay. The other question is, are Americans going to be asked to sacrifice? Are they going to be asked to pay $5 at the pump? And all of the things that go along with that. We've got record inflation right now, and we have a stock market that it's levels that we haven't seen since the 1970s. So the question is, are we going to be asked to sacrifice? And it sounds like you're saying, yes, that's the trade-off. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, in the sense that we want to do everything we can to both bring down prices for Americans, to make it easier on American pocketbooks, but we want to find ways to do that do not give a free pass to Putin and the unthinkable aggression and torture and murder that they have committed in Ukraine. So let's talk about what those type of things could be. One, you've seen the proposal that actually came from our Secretary of Treasury to cap the price that people would buy Russian oil at. The idea there is don't reduce the supply, but reduce the profits coming into him. Secondly, give a holiday for the gas tax at both the federal and state level and lower gas prices by 50 cents. Now, we've just seen gas prices come down about 17 cents. You add another 50 cents, you're starting to make some progress. Three, we've been pushing refineries to do everything they can to bring back refining capacity. They closed down 1 million barrels a day prior to President, over the last 2 years, 800,000 in 2020. We're working to do everything we can.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's the problem. The oil industry. Okay, well, you got to let me get a question in here. The oil industry has made it clear that they feel like the administration has basically condemned their industry and doesn't want them to grow, wants them to shrink over time. I think that, I could put up a whole litany of sound bites that back that up. But I think it's interesting because now the administration is saying that they're going to make new leases available to drill on federal land, which is something that the president ran against. He said that he wouldn't do that. He stopped them. So, and I know that there's mixed reaction to this decision about whether or not it's being done in a way that will actually make a difference in lowering gas prices. But is that an admission that that was a mistake back then?
No, not at all. There are many things we need to do that this period shows we need to do to have energy independence. I'm sorry, you're not hearing me?
I'm not hearing him. Sorry, I am unable to hear Gene Sperling right now. All right.
Well, I just wanted to say, if people can hear me still, what I wanted to say is, one, One of the other things the president did is put 180 million more barrels of oil supply on the market. That was a major thing we've done to increase the supply of oil and ask our other countries to put another 60 million on themselves. In terms of the oil industry, we are next year projected to be at record production. Natural gas is at record production. We've always known that was part of the mix in having energy independence, along with things like encouraging more electric cars, encouraging more energy efficiency. And we also believe that you could do more at this time to give consumers relief across the board. That does require congressional action sometime, and we would love to see bipartisan efforts to bring down drug prices, to bring down child care prices,
I just want to let people know
that would take pressure
Hold on
off
one second, Gene. I'm just going to jump in. I couldn't hear you for about the last 45 seconds, so I just want to let people know that at home. Before I let you go, I do want to ask a question. And, when we look at the polls, it's clear that people don't feel like this is working for them right now. They feel very strapped. They're paying $5 a gallon for gas, and they've lost the S&P probably 20%, tech stocks 30% over the course of the presidency so far. That being said, I want to ask you one quick question about the airlines, because Pete Buttigieg is getting a lot of heat from people in his own party, from Ro Khanna, from Bernie Sanders. And as a senior advisor to the president, have you spoken to him about this? Has he spoken to Pete Buttigieg, and is he pressing him for more action from this Secretary of Transportation during all of these airline debacles?
Well, we have enormous confidence in Secretary Buttigieg. He is a star in this cabinet. And, I'm going to let him speak for himself.
What is that based on, sir? On what do you base that on? On what accomplishments? What would you point to?
We have an infrastructure bill going out in which he has done an enormous amount. A bipartisan infrastructure bill in which he has done an enormous amount to get funds out. They got funds out to aviation manufacturing. That was part of the American Rescue Plan that has strengthened supply chains across the board. And I'm just, what I'm saying is that I'm not going to front run Secretary Buttigieg. He's going to be speaking and addressing these issues. I'll let him do that for himself.
All right. We're just curious if the president had spoken to him, if the president is satisfied, and obviously on those other fronts, there's a lot of questions about how successful the infrastructure plan's been. I know inflation is taking a huge bite out of what people are actually able to build at this point, so that doubles back on that issue. Gene, thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulty, and glad that we got you back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that,
hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.